As of January 2019, on average, over 130 Americans overdosed on opioid drugs per day.
Drugs most frequently found as a source of overdose in order are
fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and alprazolam. 3 of these involve the opioid receptors of the brain, and 2 are considered opioids.
This abuse and death can be stopped. But how? First, we need to understand that there are lots of factors that contribute to addiction, other than just the nature of drugs. We need to provide educational services about the dangers of using opioids. We need to provide safe and convenient disposal methods to ensure that unused prescriptions don't fall into the wrong hands. And we need to monitor the prescription drugs themselves as they are being written and used and fulfilled.
There are also abuse deterrent properties built into legal opioids that make them harder to abuse. This technology must continue to be expanded and invested in.
Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
Be the death of me.
My name is Charlotte Cater, and I'm an undergraduate researcher here at the University of Arizona. This explanation for the opioid epidemic ignores huge swaths of the problem, most specifically the involvement of Purdue Pharma's best-selling opioid painkiller known as OxyContin.
So I'm more of a researcher, so what we're trying to do to break that cycle, so we're trying to make non-addictive pain drugs.
This is an audio excerpt from my interview with Dr. Streicher of the University of Arizona Department of Pharmacology.
I think a lot of what's led to it is poor education.
What we have in the late 1990s, when opioid addiction really starts to take off, is a movement to treat pain aggressively. I'm going to let the New York Times journalist Barry Meier explain the relationship between this and OxyContin.
The drug industry played a role in the pain management movement. Not long after OxyContin's launch, Purdue began paying the travel and hotel costs of doctors to attend 3-day seminars on pain management in resort locations. The theme of those meetings was pain's widespread undertreatment and the need for doctors to address the problem by more aggressively prescribing long-acting narcotics like OxyContin.
Again, Dr. Streicher.
You've got people that don't have the right training that are trying to more aggressively treat pain, so their opioids are going to be one of the first things they're going to reach for.
In other words, Purdue took advantage of gaps in the education system in order to advertise and promote their new product without any checks. This is fine, but recall that the product in question is Oxy, a highly potent, addictive, and potentially deadly opioid. And this is just where the story begins. During the advertisement process, Purdue made a lot of bold claims regarding Oxy. Remember this one?
Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
This is a video from Purdue, meant for prescribers to show patients before fulfilling their prescription for opioid painkillers. And it turns out that this claim isn't really based on anything. And this happens to be true for a lot of the claims that Purdue made about Oxy when they were advertising it. Dr. Streicher goes into a bit more detail.
It was strongly suggested by Purdue that the drug would be non-addictive. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out that wasn't really based on anything. Mm-hmm. So it was literally a sentence in an editorial. And it was said something like, well, due to the slower onset and longer duration of action, we don't think this is going to induce addiction. But it was just like a hypothesis.
What this means is that Purdue was making false claims about the product OxyContin during advertisement. And this breaks a slew of consumer protection laws. This quasi-illegal overprescription of opioids has resulted in essentially a flooded market for them within the United States. They're easy to come by for recreational use, and on top of that, they have a reputation for being safe. I mean, they're medicine. And these drugs are still highly addictive. People who use Oxy for recreational use are then more likely to turn to illicit opioids like heroin and fentanyl, desperate for a fix. So yeah, illicit opioids are a big part of the problem. We do need to provide safe disposal kiosks for prescription drugs, and we need to educate the youth about the dangers of using them recreationally. But we also need to understand that there is a lot more going on here than weakness of individual character. This is a systemic problem, with laws being broken and people being taken advantage of. It needs a systemic solution. starting with programs to educate the prescribers themselves and stricter regulations on what claims are being made in advertisements.